On today's show, we're diving into the game of a player with potentially Cole Caulfield level upside, eligible for the 2025 NHL draft, the very toolsy 5'7" Cameron Schmidt.
You are Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, and welcome back to Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On this show, we break down everything prospects related for you 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. I'm your host, Sebastian High, the USHL scout over at Elite Prospects. And on today's episode, we'll be breaking down the game of one of the most electrifying players in the entire draft class, and he may not even go in the first round because, well, he's 5'7", and size is always king at the NHL draft. But he has so many game-breaking elements in his game that he's a player that could potentially defy the odds and go in the first round, cementing himself as, I believe, the first ever 5'7" player to go in the first round at the NHL draft. Please do correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's the stat. So that's the look out here for the show today. Have a lot to dig our teeth into. In the first segment, we'll look at the profile and the overall tool ability, and there's so much to like there, whether it's the elite shot, the elite skating, and the interesting physical elements with this player. Then we'll move on to more of the mental habits, the intelligence, the hockey sense, how he's going to project to the NHL game, and any other things of note with this player. And finally, we'll wrap up the show by looking ahead a little bit at where you might go on draft day, which NHL teams are the best fits, and which NHL player comps make the most sense. So that is the show here for today, and we'll dive right into it. But first, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. So, Cameron Schmidt, who is this player? Cameron Schmidt is a 5'7" and 1/4, 161-pound right shot winger. He can play down the left or the right-hand side. He played largely on the left wing this season. And what he brings is incessant speed. He's the fastest skater in the draft and potentially the best skater in the entire draft, as well as an absolute howitzer of the shot, where he might also be the best goal scorer in this entire draft. If you have a player combining the class's best skating and the best shooting and a really high impressive motor and really good playmaking skills and strong handling, there's a picture that forms here of a very dynamic player who can make things happen in a moment's notice. He can really just blow games apart, but consistency has been the main factor this season. And he's a fascinating player. He played with the Vancouver Giants this campaign, and he had an absolutely blistering start. He was among the top scoring players in the entire CHL, I believe, for the first month or two of the season. Slowed down a little bit more as the year went on, but he still finished with 40 goals, 38 assists, and 78 points in 61 games. That's 0.66 goals a game and 1.28 points per game. That's excellent production at any level, let alone for a 5'7", 161-pound draft eligible forward. He absolutely lit it up this season. And there's a lot in his game, I think, that could really help a projection as well to the NHL level, even though the size is definitely a hurdle to surmount. And let's start off then with the tools with Cameron Schmidt. And the physicality is such an interesting element because, of course, he's a very small player at 5'7", 161 pounds, right? You'd expect the physicality to be something that he just gets cratered in. And at Elite Prospects, we still have him down as a 3.5 level physical player on our 9-point grading scale, which you can look in the description down below. It's posted there with all the details of what each number means. But basically, a 5 is like your NHL baseline, what you're expecting an NHL player to have in like a bottom six capacity. And still, so like 3.5 is significantly below NHL average. And that's us like really acknowledging the fact that there are big hurdles to surmount here in terms of the size and just getting like completely like contained by big, rangy, strong defensemen. But at the same time, he has a level of not just intensity in his physicality, but intelligence. He's very selective with his physical moments. And he's a player that I've seen like have a really good understanding of leverage mechanics, getting underneath opponents, winning possession for the puck, outworking the players he's playing against, winning constantly races to loose pucks. That this isn't a player I think who's going to be stuck at a 3.5 in terms of a physical projection. I think he could easily grow into a 4.5, maybe even a 5 by the time that he's in the NHL, which is certainly impressive for a player of this stature. And I think that these are elements that also make me so hopeful for Cameron Schmidt's overall projection to the NHL, because the biggest issue in terms of the raw tools is the physicality, the size, and even that has some really strong elements within it. But let's dive into the more exciting details here, and we'll kick it off with the shot, because he has the best shot in the entire draft class, in my opinion. If not, like maybe one other player contends up there, but like it really is like Cameron Schmidt's award to lose among this class. It's a 7 grade for us at Elite Prospects. That's a very high end rank for a shot grade. There's no one with like a Cole Eiserman level shot this season, but still, I think that this is a very special release, both in its power and its adaptability and its precision. He's a player that was just a constant threat to score goals, whether it be from range, middle range, in tight. He can score from kind of everywhere in the offensive zone, and the adaptability as a goal scorer is just really special at this level. But the skating is even better somehow. He's an 8 grade skater for us, easily the best among all forwards in this draft class. I think like James Haygood is kind of in that realm as well. And among defensemen, you have Matthew Schaefer as well. But I mean, apart from like 2 of the top like 3 or 4 or 5 picks there, Cameron Schmidt's the guy in terms of skating. And he's the fastest player in the draft, bar none, in terms of just straight line speed, acceleration, explosiveness. He's a really fantastic mover. And that makes his life so much easier at his size as well, because he's able to, yeah, sure, get around opponents, but he's also able to feint to get around and then cut inside and go through lines of defense. He's not a player that has to take the indirect route. He's also a guy that has often doubled down and taken that direct path, going through sticks and hands of opponents and driving the middle of lane. And these are habits that you need at this size in the NHL. You can't just be restricted to the perimeter. And Cameron Schmidt has been doing that quite effectively this season to get involved consistently. And this is also what I'm talking about with the physicality, where the motor is there, the middle drive is there. Again, the consistency, it wanes a little bit, but to be able to do this at all is already impressive. So I think when he progresses through the ranks, is able to just beef up his frame a little bit because he's still quite light. I think that he's going to get a much easier time as well in terms of accessing those middle areas of the ice. But that's not to neglect the playmaking or handling either. These are 2 very strong elements in Cameron Schmidt's game. Very dynamic puck handler. Even though he's like the fastest and best skater in the entire draft class, his hands fully keep up. They don't like exceed his skating in any way. I'd say it's maybe like a 6.5 grade on our 9-point scale, where it's a very strong tool, bordering on like elite game breaking, but not quite there. Like, I think other elements do a bit more of that offensive driving for him than just the handling, but it's really quite dynamic. He's able to like embarrass defenders and dissect defensive structures, and he's so manipulative as well in his rushes, especially when he's handling at pace. There's so much to like there. And the playmaking too, there were a couple games this season that I caught where his playmaking well outperformed his scoring, where he looked like a pure playmaker certain shifts of it, just setting up his teammates left and right and dragging defenders out of position in order to exploit the space behind them and hitting teammates in stride with accurate, precise, pacey passes on the tape. Just a really, really like cohesive set of tools here. Not to say that his game is cohesive at this point. Like the consistency again is an issue, as we'll be talking a bit more about in the next segment, but they're all the building blocks, all the puzzle pieces to come together that are here in this player. So this is just so exciting, I think, in terms of that projection of the chance of getting not just like a top 6 player, but a player that can break games open for you in the mold of players like Alex DeBrincat or even a Cole Caulfield, but with a bit extra like grit and like nastiness and middle drive and intensity and speed, that like, yeah, it's like a turbocharged version a little bit of those high skill scorers that have made the NHL and after elite level production at the junior level and dropping on draft day due to their like 5'7", 5'8" frames. So I think that Cameron Schmidt is certainly following in those footsteps. Is he going to progress the same way? We'll have to wait and see. But definitely a player I'd be more than willing to take a swing on, take a risk on in the teens. He's a potential game breaker, a potential game changer at the NHL level, and you don't come by those every single day. And he's most likely going to be available on day 2. So I think a team's going to get an absolute gem on their hands in the second round. But that wraps things up here for the first segment. And the next one, we'll delve in a little bit more to how he ticks, what his habits are, how his tools interact, and just some potential off-ice stuff that we wanted to broach as well. But all that coming up after these messages from our sponsors here at Locked On NHL Prospects. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highly worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot, a breakout player, or anything else, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in on the game before tip-off and live. With player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever before to play smart and win big. Which players are showing up in the biggest moments? Is it going to be a superstar talent, or is it going to be the depth gem that you just know has been waiting in the wings to play big when it matters most? The choice is yours with FanDuel. If you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to set up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All righty, let's keep things rolling here in the second segment, breaking down the game of Cameron Schmidt, the high-flying scoring winger from the Vancouver Giants. And let's kick things off here by breaking down how he thinks the game. And I think that his intelligence, his hockey sense, is also an area of strength. There are really many different elements in this player's game to get excited about and to project. And even if you're doubtful about the chances of the value of a 5'7" sniper, there's a lot here that not every big player can bring to the ice. And if you're able to get this kind of package in the second round, why not just take that risk? Because again, he thinks the game very well. It's again with that like physicality. He's very proactive with it. He's selective. He's thoughtful about it. It's not just like blindly trying to be physical and ping pong his way between opponents and trying to land hits and trying to overcompensate for being smaller. It's about finding those small advantages and just being gritty, working hard, being the first on to lose pucks and establishing inside positioning. These proactive habits, I think, are a big part of what makes me super excited about the potential with this player, because again, he's able to adapt. He's a really intelligent player with the puck on his stick. Not the most efficient always, but he comes up with really creative ideas and he's able to execute them at pace through multiple sticks of defenses. And overall, I think that these elements, when you combine that with the high-end vision and the creativity, and sure, there isn't the same refinement in habits or reads as with other players that may get lower grades on their sense than a 6, like it is here with Cameron Schmidt, but they also don't bring the special elements where the intelligence is able to create advantages in the offensive zone, create these really dangerous chances. And Cameron Schmidt does this on a very regular basis. But again, the consistency. So like regularity in terms of like overall averaging out per game, very regular. There's a lot of these chances, like even on a per game basis. But it's that there's like sometimes like 12 in one game and then 2 in the next. So that consistency game to game of being able to bring these game breaking elements to the table night in, night out, that's going to be key for Schmidt to translate all of these abilities to the NHL level, because at his size, he's not going to have the luxury of being on some nights and off others in terms of his offensive involvement. He's going to get benched. He's going to get slotted lower down the lineup where he's having to play more of a checking role. He's not getting the same puck touches or the power play opportunities. He's going to have to find a level of consistency. And scorers are always erratic and a little bit inconsistent to a certain degree, right? Like even if you're looking at Cole Caulfield, who had a tremendous breakout season this year where he scored 39 goals and he put up like 70 plus points and all of that, it was still a bit like sparsed out in terms of where these goals came, right? There's a big chunk in the last like 10 or 15 games of the season, and there's a big chunk in the middle of the season, and there were dry patches throughout and stuff, but he still finished with 39 goals. I think that Schmidt might be a bit similar in terms of the regularity of scoring, but you also saw with Caulfield that he came to play in the playoffs. He scored the most goals of any Hab in that Washington series. And I think that Cameron Schmidt, because he also has this middle drive and he's able to play in front, in and around the net front, and he's adaptable, whether he's as a playmaker, as a goal scorer, if he's trying to delay, or if he's trying to have a burst of speed to beat an opponent to a loose puck, he's able to change his engagement and his habits for different situations. And I think that adaptability feeds that intelligence being a well above average grade for the NHL. So the fact that he's the best sniper in the class and the fastest player in the entire CHL this season, like he's so toolsy, right? There are these truly special elements. And in this year's draft class, when you exit the top 10, you have maybe another 5 to 8 players that have like truly special elements left on the board beyond that stage. And Cameron Schmidt is without a doubt one of them. Truly, truly special elements. But there are, again, these incongruencies in terms of that consistency, and in terms of hitting an elite upside, he's going to have to be definitely more reliable. And I think part of that also comes, like, there have been some rumblings around like character issues or arrogance, and we hear this every once in a while with a couple draft eligible players every season, where there are some of these remarks that are kind of floating around from sources that have some insights on the player and his surroundings and the team itself, and like seemingly there is some credence to that. But again, you have the same kind of thing with Justin Carbonneau this season, where there's also that kind of confidence, and he's going to have to get a little bit of a check on that in the coming seasons, which is definitely going to come when he's playing at Boston College next season. But with Cameron Schmidt, I think it's something that he's just going to have to mature a little bit as a human being and as a hockey player. But I don't think that it's the kind of thing to like not draft a player for. Like, of course, you're going to have interviews and you're going to have preferences based on the interviews. But if you're picking like 26th overall and Cameron Schmidt's left on the board and no one else with like top line upside or top pairing upsides left available, which they're most likely not going to be, why not just take the best potential player who could change the outlook of your franchise if things go well? And if they don't, at least you missed while taking a shot at a player that could change the constellation of your franchise, that you could build around, that you, maybe have to adapt your lineup a little bit around in terms of adding a bit more beefy size to surround him and all these different elements. Because of course, like for playoff hockey, you want to have that weight, you want to have that heft, and Schmidt's not going to be bringing those elements, but he's going to be bringing elements of being able to put the puck in the back of the net. And it's very important, even in playoff hockey, to be able to score goals. And I think that Schmidt's a player that will be able to do that at the NHL level if he's able to keep progressing on these tools. They have to remain special elements relative to his age group continuously in these coming seasons. If they just plateau and other players kind of catch up to him and they aren't just standout traits anymore in 2 or 3 years' time, that likelihood of being a top 6 impact piece is going to drop off dramatically. So definitely there are elements of risk with this player, but there's risk with any player once you're drafting outside the top 15, top 20. There's always going to be a risk that you're taking on, that they're not going to be playing for you, that they're not going to reach the NHL in like a really meaningful capacity for your team. And why not swing and potentially miss on the guy that could absolutely change the outlook of your franchise rather than a potential bottom 6 piece? I think that there's a lot of reasoning here to select a player like Cameron Schmidt. And I'm just going to read out one scouting report from one of my colleagues at Elite Prospects this season to kind of paint a picture of what Cameron Schmidt is like as a player. And this is a report from David St. Louis from March 1st of 2025 in a game between the Everett Silvertips and the Vancouver Giants. He writes, Schmidt's playmaking continues to slowly improve. He was downshifting in this game to involve teammates in his play, creating delay plays and landing soft deflection passes into space. He was dragging defenders with him and then passing behind their heels to teammates and making plays directly off the wall. His plays were often attempted in tight windows, and he succeeded in pulling them off most of them. He's more of an orchestrator than a pure shooter on a power play now, too. All this to say that his passing ability is no longer a concern. In fact, he would benefit from becoming even more of an off-puck mover and shooter and developing his abilities to fire off passes. That's how he could score part of his goals at the NHL level. Same physical engagement too. He seals pucks, absorbs pressure, and passes off the wall. Impressive sequence of abilities for a player of his size. And his defensive involvement was good all game long. He's not making elite plays often enough at his size, but the package is very interesting, and he has all the potential to add that elite layer with more experience. I continue to really believe in him. A top 10 talent that could be had much later on in the draft. That's Cameron Schmidt for you, a truly top 10 talent on skill alone who could be had on day 2, maybe even the mid-second round. So in the next segment, we'll be breaking down where he might actually land on draft day, what the range is, which teams fit best, and again, which players are the most linear player comps for Cameron Schmidt. All that coming up after these messages from our sponsors at Locked On NHL Prospects. All right, let's wrap up the show here in the final segment, breaking down the game of Cameron Schmidt of the Vancouver Giants. And let's kick things off with what his range might be on draft day. And this is a fascinating topic because on skill alone, in my opinion, this should easily be a top 20 player. However, there's never going to be a skill alone thing at the draft like this, especially if a player is 5'7". So where will he go? The range I'm putting out here is going to be 28th overall to 64th overall. I think you're going to see a team that, if he drops to the second round, to the late second round, at the very least, I think a team's going to trade up to one of the last picks in the second to nab him up because he is such a special talent. And I also think there's a chance that a team is just there in the first round and their favorite guys are off the board and they're like, well, let's just take the swing on the elite skill guy and see what happens down the road, especially if they like the interview, if it's been like constructive conversations and they think that they can channel his development in a way that the chances of him reaching the NHL expand a bit. I could definitely see a team like the Carolina Hurricanes taking that swing late on in the first round. I mean, the Hurricanes are picking 29th overall, and I think that's about the earliest that you're going to see Cameron Schmidt go off the board. But again, if he falls in that second round, he could go anywhere in that range. I mean, Lane Hudson fell to 62nd overall, but I also think that teams are learning, right, that there are these special players and they're undersized and they're small and they don't have the most comparables in the NHL that are that size and play that way, but they bring enough special elements that if you can get them in the second round, the mid-second, like with Cole Hudson last year when the Capitals got him there, why not just take that swing? So I think that there's a lot of reason to kind of expect him to go in the second round, but not impossible he falls to the third either. Like we've seen crazier things happen. But I think that if I'm balancing out the odds, the second round would be my guess for his range. On my personal board, he's like a 17 to 21 player. He's easily like a top 20 range player on skill. There's so much game breaking ability that he brings to the ice that no one else in that range can provide. So I think that really combines for an exciting player that I would take a risk on much earlier, I think, than NHL teams would. But moving on, which other teams would be good fits apart from the Carolina Hurricanes, who of course always just love swinging on the most elite skill that they have left available on the board? Well, the Chicago Blackhawks, I think, would make some sense. I know they want to beef up their forward core, so this doesn't really help on that front, but he does add a compliment to a guy like Nick Lardis. So they already have one undersized sniper in their lineup. What Schmidt does is he brings same to better level of goal scoring ability, plus way better skating and a better motor and more adaptability on puck. I think that if you have those two players together, and Connor Bedard is not very big either, and Frank Nazar isn't either, that's kind of your full quota of undersized forwards. So you're going to have to find some really good, big, beefy guys to surround them with. But I think that if they're able to get over that hump of convincing themselves to spend a pick on another small player, especially if he falls like the early third round, I think they just do it. Like Kyle Davidson's shown in his tenure with the Blackhawks that yes, he's trying to build a cohesive team that complements one another and all these different aspects, but he also just gets very excited at the draft when a player who shouldn't be available anymore is. We saw it with Oliver Moore at 19th overall in the 2023 draft. We saw it last year with a player or two as well. I know that for sure that was the case there with Merrick Van Acker, who they were considering picking like at 21st overall or something, or 20th overall, wherever they were selecting earlier on in the first round as well, with their second pick rather than just their third that they traded for. So I think that a guy like Schmidt could also get that kind of excitement out of the scouting staff and management team with the Chicago Blackhawks. But I'd love to hear from Blackhawks fans down below. Do you think it's a fit? Do you think it's like not a fit at all? I'd be very curious to hear. And last but not least, the Pittsburgh Penguins, a team that just needs skill. They need dynamism. They need ability. They need game breakers. This is a potential game breaker in the second round. You take that swing. Like the Pens need ability, and they have picks in this range, right? I mean, their own second round selection was traded to the Montreal Canadiens in that Jeff Petrie deal a couple of years ago, but they are selecting at 59th overall. And I think if Schmidt's available at that range, like definitely like for the Pittsburgh Penguins, they need this skill. Just take that swing, right? I think that at that stage in the draft, it makes perfect sense. If he's left on the board, I could really, really easily see him falling there to the Pittsburgh Penguins. But to wrap up the show, let's talk about his ceiling, his floor, and his NHL player comps. For his ceiling, I see a high-flying, top-six triple-threat scorer who's able to create through his hands, his passing, and his goal-scoring ability, and constantly pushes the pace with speed and snarl. He's a player I think could be a real, like turbocharged version of Alex DeBrincat in terms of DeBrincat, but with a real level of motor and speed and intensity to him that obviously DeBrincat has never been known for. But in terms of floor, probably you're talking about an AHL scorer like your Trey Fix-Wolanskis or your Matthew Phillips, undersized guys that dominate and wreck the AHL, but just can't really take that next step to the NHL pace and physicality. There's a chance that Schmidt ends up falling in that role, and then yeah, sure, it's disappointing if you spent a top 64 selection, but again, I think that the risk is worthwhile. I think the chances of him becoming a Cole Caulfield level of player or something around those lines in terms of a top six sniper who can flirt with 40 goals, flirt with 75 points on a pretty regular basis if he's surrounded with talent and given the right kind of support through his development, you take that swing in the second round. So Cameron Schmidt, one of my favorite players in this year's draft class, who has, again, Alex DeBrincat qualities, Cole Caulfield kind of qualities. There's a level of Connor Garland in there as well in terms of that snarl, the middle drive, the just desire and bite in his game. So I think that those are some of the players that remind me of Cameron Schmidt in terms of NHLers. But do you have any better ones in mind? Please do let me know in the comments down below. And that is the end of today's show. So thank you so much for tuning in. As always, if you're listening on your favorite podcasting platform, please do make sure to make us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, going to head on over to Locked On Fantasy Hockey, where Flip and Steel break down everything you need to know to build yourself a competitive and sustainable fantasy roster. But that's everything from me today. I'm your host, Sebastian High, and I look forward to catching you listening again very, very soon.